right.
Yeah, this is like the awkward moment where it's like you see the participant number go up and up, and you're like, what should I say?
Yeah. I just plug up, I open up the attendees list and I'm like, who do I know?
Yeah.
And watch them come in and go, who did I
I don't
serve?
know about you, Will, but I feel like I know less and less.
Yeah, every year.
Depends. It depends. I mean, there are obviously, people that hang in there a little longer and you might know them, but I think generally the trend is less and less each year.
It's a funny thing. Every submariner I've ever met has the same exact conversation, or every nuke even. It's like, oh, when did you go to power school? Oh, you were 03 to well, I was 06 to 9, whatever. And everyone, without a doubt. Oh, you were on the Providence? Oh, my buddy was on the Providence.
Now I can actually say, oh, my buddy's the skipper of that boat, like, yeah,
It's good.
crazy. So, all right, I think we get started. Welcome, Dan. Thank you for joining. Welcome attendees, Nukes. Thank you for joining us. This is our third transition workshop. I call it a workshop just because I think it sends out the connotation that we're here to help you, and that's really what we're trying to do. I'm Mike Bradley. I'm the guy that kind of organizes this, but this is my board, and I couldn't do what I do without them. And just to kind of get rolling, I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves. Well, I'll start with myself, and then everyone can follow suit. I'm a Naval Academy grad, class 2001, electrical engineering undergrad. I did a prototype in Saratoga, then was on a boomer out of Kings Bay, MPA, DCA, QAO, docking officer. I did make a foreign port call in Scotland as a boomer guy, which is a rarity, and then did my shore duty in DC, pretty cool shore duty, working on the space programs for the Navy out at the National Reconnaissance Office, and then got out from there. Now, I do a little bit of everything. I'm involved in my family business. I run this as a nonprofit, do a little bit of writing on the side, and have a fixer-upper house I'm working on. And when I get more time, I'll probably do a little more consulting. I like small business type stuff, but that's me, Mike Bradley. So I know everybody's different on here. So let's go to Will next. Will, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I was USS Miami, graduated NROTC. I've since leaving the Navy, I started 3 software tech businesses and had 2 of them acquired. I now work for a university teaching other people how to start entrepreneurial ventures or start their own business. And part of the reason that I stay involved in this is so that you guys have somebody to talk to about entrepreneurship or starting your own business, whether it's high tech, low tech, no tech. My job is to help you with that. That's me.
Thank you, Will. Lauren, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Lauren Wilson, Naval Academy graduate, Nukes WO. After Navy, I went and worked for a biotech company, kind of cut my teeth in sales there in the digital and diagnostic sales space. And then I transitioned over to a startup world, working for a digital identity verification platform. Had a good time doing that. And then now I'm at Spreedly, and Spreedly is in the financial tech space. So, fintech, and I kind of help customers accept digital payments, customers like HBO Max and DocuSign kind of vault credit cards and secure that payment information for customers. So.
Thank you, Miss Lauren. Kevin Ryan, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so I came into the Navy from NC State via ROTC, was on the Montpelier in Norfolk, Is a JO, and then did a Fibron tour. So I can interpret a little bit of SWO. And after that, went to power school as an instructor for about 2 years. After the Navy, I went to Google, Google Fiber in Raleigh. Did that until this January when I took a new position with Iconics, which is a data center commissioning firm, and moved out here to the North Carolina coast.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin. You hear him pronounce it Norfolk. I was stationed in Norfolk. So, Alex, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on, everybody? Alex Nestor. So I was 2012 Naval Academy, majored in English and Russian with a semester abroad, and then went the nuke route. So good times there. Was on the USS Georgia, so the SSGN lifestyle. I got stranded on Diego Garcia for like half a year. It was terrible. And then I got red detailed to Prototype up in New York. So if you're a shift eng, please send me a message. Good times up there. And then getting out of the Navy, my wife and I, we moved to Indianapolis. And I started with Amazon. So I've been doing this Amazon gig for 2.5 years. I've drunk the Kool-Aid and, working my tail off, shipping all of your packages the next day. But it's been a good run. So I'm kind of like, any questions you have about Amazon, it's like an enormous company, but please let me answer and help however I can. So, or, I guess like tech a little bit, who knows? Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Alex. Chris, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Chris Whitley here. I'm a Naval Academy graduate, 2008. I was poli-sci, so group 3 major like Alex. And Lauren. Went to USS Alabama at a Bangor on a submarine there. And I did University of Memphis, ROTC is my short tour, did my MBA while I was there. And when I got out of the Navy, I joined with B of A through their Veterans Associate program. So now I do investment banking. I work with not-for-profit hospitals specifically, a pretty niche part of investment banking, but definitely happy to talk about finance to anyone, business school route also. Mike, as a side note, was super helpful for me when I got out of the Navy, being a really good sounding board, being really helpful. And I've been involved with the Power Conference here for several years. So really excited to talk to you guys. It's great that you're here tonight and looking forward to answering any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Dan the Man, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey guys, I'm Dan Faraday. I was an 09 grad from the Naval Academy, also a Group 3 major, so poli-sci, and was voluntold into Nuke. So I ended up on a fast attack out of Norfolk as well on the Scranton. And I did that for about 7 years. So I did a short tour there in Norfolk. And then I ended up going to Wharton. I got my MBA, focused on finance and accounting, and then went and worked for Goldman down in Houston in their natural resources group, focused on oil and gas investment banking. And last year in September, I made a shift. I work for Jefferies now, which is a much smaller firm, focused on the consumer and retail industry. So cover things that we're all probably pretty familiar with, anything from GameStop to big retailers like that, to DTC companies, delivering products to your door. So been an interesting ride here, but I've been helping with Mike for a while, and same thing, echo Chris. I mean, anybody wants to talk about the kind of MBA route or finance, investment banking, happy to do so. And Mike, I am a little limited on time tonight due to that job that I do. So if I have to drop early and anybody wants to talk specifically, you can get in touch with me through Mike or whatever's helpful.
Thank you, Dan. And Dan also has four children now. Yeah. So
yeah, we have 4. Yeah.
Nice. Well, and his brother has 6.
That's right, 6.
Yeah. His brother, who is also Naval Academy submarines, Nuke, investment banking, Cornell. Dan's a Wharton guy. So and Wharton has been the most loyal to to the Power Conference. So it's nice having Dan involved, and he can kind of be intermediary with Wharton. So thank you, Dan. Mr. Andrew, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an '08 chemical engineering grad over from UC San Diego. Joined through the NUPOC program, where initially I was instructor over in Charleston for a year. Went over to the SWO route, so went over to Japan as EWO on McCampbell. From there, went back through the pipeline and ended up on Nimitz. So leaving the Navy, got my MBA from UCLA. From there, did an internship at Google, went over to Cisco, where I'm a product manager, and currently actually on baby leave from Cisco. But once I'm done with this baby leave, actually turning a part-time role into a full-time role, so shifting over to become head of operations at a startup. So happy to talk about anything MBA related, tech related, and also kind of shifting into startup related. So if anyone has questions about startups, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Andrew, and congrats again on the baby. And then also, I believe you're in Austin, Texas now?
Yeah, in Austin, Texas.
So he's part of, Andrew's part of the big San Francisco exodus to cool places that, you know, are not as expensive. So he can speak to Austin. So Andrew also is my left coast brain, because I've been East Coast my whole life. So he helps me out with that and Nuke stuff. So thank you, Andrew. So Mr. Eric, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey, can you hear me? Great. Eric Anderson. I was at JO on Texas, and I got off in 2015 out in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I did my shore tour at Naval Nuclear Power School in Charleston, spent 2.5 years there. I'll bet I probably have a couple students that are on right now. So hey to whoever's out there. Following my tour at Power School, I joined Partners Group. So Partners Group is a global private equity firm. And I'm sure a couple of you are probably asking, what does that even mean? So private equity, we're in the business of buying and selling companies. So we will go through a diligence process, invest in a company. My company specifically invests anywhere between, in companies that are valued anywhere between $500 million to $2 billion. We'll hold on to them for, let's call it 4 to 5 years, working with the management team to create value, growing the business, and then selling it off on behalf of our investors. So Partners Group, we have about $110 billion of assets under management globally. Most of it is in direct control assets. So I specifically work on our private equity goods and products team, which is more traditionally our industrial type assets or consumer assets. Specifically, I wear 2 hats. So one of my hats is new investments. So looking at investments and understanding if they're good businesses, do we want to invest in them, doing diligence around them, analysis, modeling, you name it, to say, is this something we want to do? And then working on the process to go buy that company. My other hat is on the operations side. So I do a lot of work with companies we already own, and I do work with specifically 3 of them. The United States Infrastructure Company, they're the guys you may or may not have seen. They drive trucks around and locate utilities underground. Form Technologies, they manufacture die-cast components. And then I work with a company called Reedy Industries, which does servicing of commercial HVAC. And specifically with that, I work with management teams, CEOs, CFOs, heads of sales, to say, hey, what's our strategy? Let's build it. Let's put some bones around it, and then go figure out what projects there are we need to go do. So I'll do anything from working on a shop floor, doing daily meetings, much like probably you all did on the boat or ship with your divisions. It's not that intuitive, but to other people, but it's something we do on a daily basis and drives business forward. Or I'll work on a sales project or whatever it is to drive the business forward. So it's I can answer anything about driving businesses or finance or private equity.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. Yeah, and we are pretty financial heavy on the board right now, at least kind of between Dan, Chris, and Eric and Andrew to an extent. But it is an interest item of many nukes. They do want to go to B school, will want to B school Yeah, so I think it's valid for us to have a lot of different East Coast, West Coast, private equity, investment banking, entrepreneurship, because there are lots of questions. So, all right. And Mary, I wasn't ignoring you. You're just like the bottom right in my windows here. So, Mary Coyne, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Coming to you live from Bath, Maine. Sorry, guys, my dinner plans on vacation were a little delayed. My name's Mary. I'm an ROTC grad from Notre Dame. I was also a political science major. I do not have an MBA. I never started a company. I'm actually at GE as a part of their junior offshore leadership program. So GE Renewable Energy specifically, and I'm just entered the offshore wind business. So I'm a commercial leader there. So if you have any questions about what it's like to be in clean energy or the renewable business, I would love to talk more about it. It turns out we have a lot of people clamoring for people who know what nautical charts are when we're building these things offshore. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Mary. And the only other board member that might join tonight is Corey Clinton. He might be joining here momentarily or later. Corey is our board member who is a medical doctor. Another kind of niche that that nukes get into that not every nuke is interested in doing, but there's a nuke every year that's interested in being a doctor. And we have Corey and a couple other ex-nukes that are now doctors that have volunteered to help them navigate through this a little more interesting career path. So that being said, I think we should just kick it off with since Dan and Chris, you're the most limited for time tonight, as far as I know. I just wanted to throw it out to you guys to start before I look at all the questions. Anything or any big mistakes or anything like that? You have an audience of about so many people here that you can give some advice to. Most are on shore duty. Some are still attached to their seagoing command. Can you think of anything that you think at this stage you would like to know that you might not have known back then?
I think a high-level piece of advice, a little motivational here, is that don't listen to too much negativity. You want to be grounded in reality, but I think to use a old expression, shoot for the stars, is I think a pretty reasonable thing. You have to understand your worth to the corporate world, and you have a lot of worth. And sometimes you might get told throughout your JO tour, like, oh, your best option is going to be to stay in the Navy, and that very well could be true. But there's a lot of really good options out there. It takes you working hard to find those options. But I would highly encourage you to never sell yourself short in your ambitions and your pursuit, because there's some really good jobs out there. You'll notice there's a ton of finance people here. That is something that historically a lot of nuclear power officers hadn't really gotten into too much. But you can see, as evidenced by the board representation here, there's a lot of people in finance, and doesn't mean that finance is the only or the best career path, but it's an example of, hey, there's areas where traditional recruiters, traditional people that have gone through the steps that you've gone through before may have not looked at before in the past. So there's a lot of doors that have been opened by people before you, and I encourage you to really be ambitious in your search if you choose to get out of the Navy.
Yeah, and I'd build on that and just say, absolutely right. And part of the benefits of that network are reach out, and you're obviously doing it by being a part of this, but having the right conversations with the people in the industries you're targeting to reach. You'd be stunned how many times I'd see a resume come across from a nuke at Wharton, which we reviewed. As the Vets Club, we would review all resumes that came through, and it's a nuke that I never reached out to any of the nukes that were there. So just there's a network, and everybody's willing to help. I mean, doesn't matter how busy they are, they'll make 10, 15, 20 minutes to at least get you in touch, or get in touch with you and then get you into the network. And then the other portion I would say is, if it's okay if you don't know what you want to do, but if you do know what you want to do, put that same kind of nuke effort into preparing for it. for the MBA route, a lot of people will listen to that negativity and say, oh, you can't really, prepare too much for the GMAT and all this other stuff. I mean, all of you guys are extremely capable of achieving, excellent scores and all that kind of stuff. And, reading the right material, I mean, getting extremely knowledgeable about this stuff before you really, you really have to go to the interview stage, and it just sets you up for success when you finally get there.
No, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Chris. Before that, and before anybody has the chance to sign out, because we could get down a tangent here. Nukes that are logging in, these people here are very busy people, not just with their work, but with their life. Everybody's a spouse, I think, on the board. Most have kids, and their jobs are busy. So the time that they're giving to you free of charge is super valuable. And I like to call that to attention during these things, and thank my board, and realize that this is what happens in this military family that we have. And well, thank you, the board, but then also this is what happens all the time. If there's somebody in a field you're interested in, they will get back to you eventually if you reach out to them. LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. Don't be afraid to reach out to even the people that you think is, now it might take them a week, it might take them 2 weeks to at least acknowledge it, and then it might take another week or 2 weeks for it to set up the 15-minute phone call or cup of coffee or whatever, but it'll probably eventually happen. And the thing is, when it happens, be crazy gracious, because until you're in these guys' seats and gals, you don't realize how busy they are. These are like 15-minute meeting busy people, which you'll understand what I mean when you get there. But I'm supposed to let you guys know there are some poll questions, just because we're curious of like where everybody's from, what stage your career's at, and so just let you know they're going to happen throughout the evening.
Mike, there's some Q&A coming in.
Yeah, Will, call any out that you want to talk about, ma'am.
This is a great question from Ronnie Ryder. What are some of the tips for actions to take, say, a year out from transition? It seems really too far out to have any meaningful employment conversations. And I think it just got answered and got taken away from me while I was reading it. What's the best time frame to start submitting applications? And it seems to vary by industry. But anyone like to jump in? And yeah, Alex, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, so I think I'm on the farthest end of that timeline. You'll find pretty typically, the larger the company or like the more like government stuff, like they'll typically be able to give offers much farther out, right? Like I interviewed for Amazon in June and I didn't start until January. So that's probably the farthest range. There's some government things where it might be even longer than that. A lot more often you'll see stuff just looking at like the next quarter in terms of what their budget is, what projects come across, what their allocated headcount and stuff like that, right? But the fact that like it's totally fine to be open about, hey, I don't transition for like 2 years. That's great. I remember going to this conference. I was like a year and a half out. I literally had no intention whatsoever of like 80% of the jobs. But I remember like I talked to the Starbucks guy for like 45 minutes. Right? Just be open about it. Like talk to these different companies, because at the end of the day, right, that's going to be your best resource to figure out like what these jobs actually mean, right? And what you actually do, and whether or not it would be something that's interesting and fun. So I know that's kind of just, my little niche, but I'm sure other people had, similar experiences or similar, advice. So.
Yeah. And I was actually in the middle of answering that before you answered that, Alex. Just to add on to that, a year out is actually the perfect time to start reaching out to people on LinkedIn, because one of the things that you're going to need to be doing when you're applying for these companies is don't just apply on the site. In fact, sure, you could apply on the site, but one of the best ways to get yourself recognized and seen is if you come in with a connection. If you know someone at that company and they can vouch for you and they can then recommend you to the internal referral site. That is the best thing to do. And so a year out, what you can do is you can start going on LinkedIn, look at target companies, look who works there, look to see if there's any connections between you and anyone you know, or see if you could even like reach out to people with cold emails. And if you do that a year out, by the time that you get closer and closer to your transition, then you could get to the point where you have it now this in at these companies that you can leverage to go wherever you want to go.
I think, Andrew, that's a great point to kind of figure out what companies you're interested in. And I think that can sometimes be the most daunting part of this, right? I mean, some people know kind of exactly what they want for the next step, you know, whether it's a school, whether it's higher education, you know the field. But for a lot of us, it's kind of a, what do I want to be when I grow up? And the only point I want to make is that, you know, kind of mainly gone are the days where you're going to work somewhere for 30 years and collect a pension. So I think it's not quite the same sort of decision process that you likely went through to decide if you wanted to serve in the Navy. You're not necessarily married to that for years and years. So mainly, I think the best thing that I found was think about what interests you, think about what you're excited by, what industries make sense. And to Chris's point, you know, don't count yourself out of anything really, because you absolutely are qualified and capable of kind of, you know, merging into any of these industries that you do not have experience in. And so I think best thing to do is just kind of explore, be open, make some lists, and don't be afraid to kind of give something a try. Don't feel like you have to kind of decide for the rest of your life what you're gonna do. I think many of us have kind of jumped around a bit, and that's totally fine.
Actually want.
Okay. Oh, go. Wait.
I was going to jump in and answer this one a little bit from my perspective. I have never applied for a job. I have never used my resume. I have one. I work for a state-owned entity and I had to submit it, but I've never really used it to get a job. And in my experience, in my opinion, who you know matters more than what you know. I just got, actually, Mary and I chatted about this briefly over our text chain. I got I hustled my own intro to the CEO of Ørsted, which is one of GE Renewable's big competitors. They do renewable wind energy. They've got a big contract over in New Jersey where I am, and we're trying to do a project with them. He's a nuke. He was a sub electrician. He's a CEO of a big renewable energy firm. And I sent him a LinkedIn message. I said, hey, you're a nuke. I'm a nuke. Can we have a conversation? And that's how we got there. And so building relationships takes time. I would go so far to say that there is no too early for this. There is some of the best interactions at our conference have been people who've come one year, made a lot of intros, talked to a lot of people, and then next year they come and they go, you know, I'm about 6 months from getting out. It's time to get serious. And they go, oh, I remember you from last year. Good seeing you, man. Let's chat. Those relationships are very valuable.
Yeah, and like exactly what Will just said, the relationships you can make with the hiring managers, that's a term that I didn't know when I was getting off the boat what that meant, but you're kind of looking at the hiring managers, you know, who Chris, Dan, Lauren, have you guys been hiring managers yet? Or Kevin, Alex? Yeah, okay, yeah. Like they're the people that you're kind of gonna work for, or they're gonna bottom line to hire. Maybe there's 2 tiers below or whatever. So the recruiters come and go, but the hiring managers are normally around for a couple of years at least, and those are the relationships that you should try to make, and then also the relationship with your network that you can make by using the contacts that you can meet here or at the job fair. So, while I have the mic here, I'd like to throw it over to my friend Dr. Corey Clinton. Corey, we did intros already, so could you just give us your best intro, please, sir?
Yes, hi. So I'm Corey Clinton. As you can see, I'm recording from my basement. What your skipper told you is true. If you quit the Navy, you'll be living in a basement, or not totally true. I got out of the Navy in 06, got married, went to med school, and now I'm a family doc in Northwestern Ohio. Moved into the old, my wife's family farmhouse out here in rural Ohio, and it's been a really good time. Transitioning out of the military was challenging at times. I was always pretty certain I made the correct decision. And mostly I'm here to help people that are interested in going to med school or going into one of the medical fields.
Thank you, Corey. We thought I've been discussing with
Mike, one more thing I wanted to add
Sure.
to the conversation. So my story of how I found my job is I went to Mike's conference, had no idea what I was doing. That was a year before I was getting out of the Navy. Talked to corporate recruiters for the first time and asked a bunch of dumb questions or said a bunch of dumb things, but it gave me confidence for the first time to talk to these people, right? You're not trained in the Navy to network. I think probably a huge miss on our superiors, but you're just not trained to do it. So having those conversations were really invaluable to me and asking stupid questions. Following that, I kind of updated my LinkedIn and put transitioning nuclear submarine officer in my title. And not that long after, my current boss reached out to me and said, hey, here's a position. If you're interested, send me a resume and we'll see where we go from here. 10 days later, I was on a plane to Denver interviewing, came home with a job offer in hand, right? A ridiculous story 9 months before I was supposed to get out of the Navy, but you never know who's looking for you, right? GE is looking for you. I see their ads all the time, right? And they're doing the search engine optimization on LinkedIn to target you, right? And I'm sure Alex, they're probably doing the same thing with Amazon. Yep. So, or small businesses, right? Somebody is looking for you and you never know how that's going to happen, and it could come through LinkedIn.
There are actually 2 or 3 questions coming in now about investment banking and MBAs. Somebody asks, do you think an MBA is required to transition from Nuke to IB or VC or private equity? Another person asked, what are the disadvantages to getting an MBA when you're getting out of the Navy? Is it worth it if I get out of the Navy and don't have an MBA? Does it matter where I get an MBA? Should I start with the company while I get my MBA? There's a couple MBA questions and a little bit of investment banking in there. Anybody want to jump in?
I can start on that one.
I was gonna say, that seems like Dr. Clinton question. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry, my sense of humor does not belong on here.
No worries. So I guess I could talk about my experience, and it really is a lot of it is a personal decision. But for me, I had a full GI Bill available, and I wanted to transition over to product management. And one of the things that I saw in the MBA program is that it allowed me to decide basically what I want to do. Because actually, when I say transitioning into tech product management, I was also considering consulting at the same time. So it allowed me to speak with people who are going to consulting, speak with people who are going to product management, and then at the same time learn the skills that would kind of like help bolster my portfolio, so to speak, when I was applying for those companies. So in my situation where I had the GI Bill, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and going to a program allowed me to kind of explore these different possibilities. It was the perfect decision. Now, that being said, there are downsides to getting an MBA. You're losing the opportunity. There's an opportunity cost of getting an MBA in the sense that you're not getting 2 years worth of income while you're going through this MBA program and essentially going through this training and education. So basically you have to figure whether it's worth it out to you, and I'm sure other people would have different experiences and can kind of add on to that.
I'll talk a little bit about my experience. I was fortunate to do ROTC as my short tour, so I took that as an opportunity to get my MBA while I was there. So the University of Memphis, probably not a top target school for investment banking. So I knew that going into it, and my personal decision was, let me take that opportunity that's here right now, and instead of deferring 2 years of my life after getting out of the Navy to do business school and then getting a job after that, I decided, let me just work a little harder to try and use the background I have in nuclear power to get a good job that traditionally sources from people that go to those Harvards and the Whartons and Stanford, right? So again, that goes back to me saying the opportunities are out there if you work hard enough. You got to talk to people like us, like the people you're networking with on LinkedIn and through other means, because I promise you the opportunities are out there. And Mike is instrumental in matching people with opportunities too. So obviously you're here with Mike and use him and leverage him and use the Power Conference, because the more people you meet, the more opportunities you're going to create for yourself. That's my experience, but I think you'll find several people that have had that experience as well.
Kind of related to Chris's question, but I've had a senior Google recruiter tell me that they make notices of gaps in resumes if you're like, in the Navy and whatever, but they also take notice of overlaps. So I'm pretty sure when Chris was applying to Bank of America and they saw, oh, he had a full-time job and he got his MBA at the same time, it carried a little more weight than if he would have just graduated or left the Navy and then got that same MBA on its own. So that applies to, I know a lot of people wonder what to do in shore duty. I can't get the most amazing degree while I'm working a day job. Well, no kidding, So people like ourselves at this round table and other, people that are good at looking at a resume or good at understanding life are going to realize, oh, you got your PMP on shore duty. You did this on shore duty. You taught yourself how to code in Python on shore, while you had a busy Pentagon job. Like that takes a little bit of gumption. So so don't hesitate to do stuff that might not be the best. Now, can you get into Harvard Business School? Yes. Right now we have 6 nukes at Harvard Business School or Stanford or Wharton, or actually we have INSEAD coming to the career fair. Please stop in and say hello to them. They're the best business school in Europe. And there's a nuke going there next year right near Paris. So, anyway, so I got off on a tangent there.
Michael, I just have one comment on kind of higher education while we're on the topic, and it's not specifically to business school, but I think kind of the question posed is maybe how valuable, how necessary is it to get, a master's degree or something like that. And I think most people will tell you, right, it depends on what you want to do. But I will say, I wanted to go into tech sales. But when I was on my, my carrier, we were in RCOH, I did the Masters of Engineering program, engineering management program through ODU. And for me, that was just a good way to kind of check the box, right, Alex? Yeah, check the box on Nuke School and really kind of make it stand out in a resume in a way, because I knew, I don't really necessarily need to or want to go to business school, but it'll be great to have a master's. And it definitely paid off dividends in my first role, where I was offered, pegged high on the salary band range. And I was told it was specifically because I had a master's degree. So I think, depends on what you want to do, what kind of flavor you need, but sometimes it's just a check in the box sort of a thing to have a master's.
Daniel.
Yeah. You mind if I say one thing? Yeah. So, if you want to go to an MBA, that's decided already, then, my experience going to a place like Wharton, it provides a significant network outside of the veteran network that is on a similar level to, what I experience here through, all this great group of people. And so that has opened up a lot of doors, and you get to see a lot of things that you would never be exposed to coming directly out of the Navy. So you kind of get to use this veteran status for like 2 years, and you can use it to get into the right business school. But then even as you're coming out of business school, it provides other advantages. And so, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world, even though I still owe $100,000, being an investment banker. It's okay, right? Like, it's going to pay dividends for me in terms of lost income. But I do think there becomes a degradation depending on what business school you go to, if you do it out of the Navy. You really, if you know you want to do a target for the top 5, top 10, and do that. That's what I would recommend.
I want to add on to that and tweak that a little bit. And then I know there's a Mary question. We'll get to you, Mary. I can see you doing the video. I don't know how I ended up being the moderator, but apparently I'm the moderator. I think that it's maybe more diverse in the top 5, top 10, whatever business schools. Different business schools have different specialties. You can usually find a nice book or magazine that will talk about it. If you want to be the CEO of a company one day that's on Wall Street, you probably have to go to Harvard. It's kind of an old boys club, and that's just what it is. And exactly what Dan said about opening up a network of people, executive MBAs, part-time MBAs, you lose out sometimes on that networking opportunity to meet those people if you're not a full-time. So there is a trade-off there. I did my MBA at Carnegie Mellon because I knew I wanted to be in early stage software and early stage tech. I chose that instead of one of the top 5, partly because I'm from Pittsburgh and I wanted to be there, but also because that was the right move for my career. And so I think there is probably more nuance to that. Go for the top 20 at least, because you guys can all get in there, but look at what you want to do. Operations, marketing, IB, consulting, all of the different B schools have different specialties that they're really good at. Okay, Mary.
The guy, Richard Montauk, that'll be there tomorrow. He is the Jedi master of knowing all of that, like what is the best one for this type of industry in this part of the country, whatever. Also, he's the expert on how to get the most financial aid money, which I never thought about that because I never went to B school, but I guess certain schools match other schools as far as financial aid. Certain schools are more generous. And also, if you have any interest in an MBA, talk to Wharton tomorrow because they have a joint MBA JD that's totally 100% covered by Yellow Ribbon. It's like $125,000 a year degree that is covered by Yellow Ribbon. So that's a pretty interesting degree. It's small cohort too. So that's one that I try to. These conversations are what I do at meetups. If Will and I are in New London, we're having the same conversations. If Kevin, Ryan, and I are in Norfolk, when I used to come up and see Alex in Saratoga and whatever, this is what we do. So if you have friends that are near any of the cities we're doing meetups or places, please encourage them to come out. I'll be in Bainbridge, Poulsbo, early September. If you have any friends stationed in Bremerton, Bangor, Silverdale, let us know because we'll be up there normally with either lunch, coffee, or beer, or a couple of those 2, 3. So
as your moderator, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to I think we're going to pass the floor to Mary because there've been a couple questions about reserves and a couple questions about leadership rotational programs. And
yeah, absolutely. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I do want to offer one last thought as a contrarian to the last question. I honestly regret getting a master's degree and thinking that it was necessary to get a job. It is not. It is not at all. I think that there's a lot of value in just having industry experience to really know that that's the right decision for you. I am in the same exact position as someone who went to Harvard and came to GE. We were paid the same, we were equally as touted, and I didn't go there. So I think it really depends on what you are truly interested in. If you are truly interested in investment banking, yeah, go get an MBA. But if you're not really sure what you want to do and you're using this as I'm going to take those 2 years to figure it out, that's a lot of money and a lot of time. So just think about it. It doesn't always have to follow that same track. I know a lot of people from my boat did that and they were lukewarm about it. So don't feel like you have to do it to be competitive because you are competitive just based on what you've done. So anyways, that's my opinion on that. But for the reserves, so there were a lot of questions that came up about what's it like? Is it a pain in the ass? Is it the juice worth the squeeze? My 2 cents is, so I'm in the reserves right now. So I live up in Saratoga Springs. I'm not a nuclear power. It's pretty great. But I commute down to Schenectady and drill there. It's not that bad. Honestly, it's a lot harder to get back in to the reserves if it ends up being something you want to do than it is to just transition, say, you know what, not for me, I'm out. Because you can do that. You can just stop if you don't sign that 3-year deal. I think it's worth it just to have that experience. I've actually really enjoyed my time. You see significantly more of the Navy and just the military in general as like a massive force than I ever did as a submariner. I think we are very, focused on our independent missions rather than understanding where we fit into the larger fabric. Granted, maybe someone had cooler naval experience than I did on an SSBN, but I definitely think if it's not too much of a burden to just give it a try, because it's very easy to just exit stage left if it ends up being more of an opposition than you want to say.
Yeah, I'm still in the reserves, so it's been just over 3 years now. So I got out of the Navy at my 7-year point, or out of active duty at my 7-year point. 2 years ago, I fogged a mirror, and now I'm a lieutenant commander. So yay! But I like it. It keeps me connected to what I did for a large portion of my life, right? Just the expectation, it's 1 weekend a month. So I'll go out to an Air Force base where there's a Navy Reserve unit. 8 in the morning on a Saturday, we leave by 3:45, come back and do it on Sunday. I'm part of a submarine undersea warfare operations unit, and we support CTF 34 Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Most of it is like sitting around and hanging out with the guys, just like you did on the boat or the ship. We go to coffee. We call each other communists, which is really frowned upon in the civilian world, and your real job. It's kind of that stuff that kept you connected. I can still see secret stuff, right? So that's the side of the world you lose when you go to full civilian. My 2 weeks of annual training year, I go out to Hawaii. I go sit in ComSub PAC's war room, essentially, and we participate in exercises. And it's pretty chill. We show up 30 minutes before my watch, sit on watch for 8 hours, go home. I had a hotel in Waikiki both times I went out. It was pretty awesome. I actually made a lot of money doing it too. So there's that as well. The other thing I want to mention about the reserves, yeah, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, right? There's still the same frustrations you have while you're on active duty. GMTs never go away. Fit reps never go away. It's actually worse because no one knows how to do them in the reserves. So there's a lot of just admin burden. Another thing kind of civilian wise that you don't think about is healthcare. And it might actually be the major reason why I stay in the reserves. It is substantially cheaper for me to stay in the reserves and use their healthcare than go through my company, to almost $14,000 a year difference of what it would be for me to go through my company versus through the reserves. And that's premiums, it's out of pocket costs, et cetera, right? And I'm sure everyone on this panel can talk about the costs of real healthcare when you got out of active duty. So happy to take questions offline about the reserves and talk about it more, but that's my 2 cents.
All right, I'm gonna kick it to Kevin Ryan here in a second, but 2 things I've learned in the reserves that I didn't realize. The reserve concentration areas are not necessarily Navy concentration areas. There's a big Navy reserve unit in Minneapolis. There's a big Navy reserve unit in Dallas. The Navy's trying to put their reserve units in a lot of bigger population areas rather than necessarily Navy areas. 2, I have a lot of friends that lateral transferred within the reserves, like they left submarines and they went EDO in the reserves. And things like that, and doing some space EDO stuff. So there are lots of reserve questions that the people on this board that are in the reserves, or I've just, by talking to a lot of people, I've picked up a lot of reserve gouge. So Kevin, the question I have for you, now that you're a data center expert, there's nukes that are listening in. There are tons of jobs in data centers. And it seems like darn near every job of them is a good fit for a nuke. And you know, Kevin is, you can tell me again, Kevin, but you help commission them. That's a term that gets used a lot. Amazon AWS has a whole fleet of nukes doing their project management, their program management. Like you could say Amazon runs the internet through AWS and nukes are running AWS. So the nukes are running the internet. But Kevin, could you explain, like, kind of in general, where data centers are, what nukes do, like, and what you do when you commission a data center?
Yeah, totally. So the commissioning term, with a lot of other folks, I use the equivalent of like a home inspection, but for us, it's a retest or an acceptance test is mainly what we're doing. So if you've done that, you know, coming out of some sort of maintenance availability, like that's what we do. We have a script, which is a FWP that we go execute to and report the results to the customer. And that gives them a decent feeling that their high reliability data center is going to work. As far as roles in data centers, so like my role is more of a project-based role, where I'm kind of bouncing around between different sites and working on different things, not in one particular place, just working for a customer. I think you'd see that a lot with commissioning or some of the construction-based roles in data centers, which are also great fits. Some of your big contractors doing a lot of work out there. There's also more operations-based roles where you think more of being like a duty officer, where you're the guy who's on call for 12 hours a day or however they break it up. But just kind of maintaining operations, doing maintenance, all that fun stuff. But you're getting calls in the middle of the night. There's also a big tail of folks who are selling things to data centers. And that's a great role for nukes, I think, too. Do we have Schneider Electric joining tomorrow? Okay. Yeah, great example there. Tons of products to sell to data centers, looking for sales engineers. It's pretty technical. Like most of the sales folks that I work with have engineering degrees. Like you've got to be to that level to be able to speak the language. But that's another option too, a little bit different than the operations side. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Areas of the country, there's a ton in Northern Virginia, Oregon. Some of them are more remote. So if you're looking for like the country lifestyle, there's probably some good options out there as they're looking for cheap real estate. Shoot, I'm trying to think what else there is.
Well, they're not normally coastal, right? Because of humidity and natural disasters, right? Like they try to keep them off the coast.
Yeah, they're not going to be right on the coast. But on the East Coast here, like Northern Virginia, like
yeah. Well, that's the crossroads of the internet, right? Is like if there's look at the internet roadmap and you'll find jobs anywhere there is the major fiber. Well, thank you.
That's
Kevin.
it. Yeah, tons popping up in Columbus, Tennessee. A lot of stuff coming down that way, and it's not just so you got big players, Microsoft, Facebook, Google. I'll have their sites, but then there's a ton of smaller companies who are leasing space to the bigger folks out there. So don't discount those.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. Mr. Moderator, can I kick it to Lauren for a second? Lauren, can you speak to sales a little bit as far as when I tell people that nukes could be a good fit in sales and maybe like more specifically like tech sales, could you explain normally how a sales position works? I know the commission salary structure often scares people, but I think another career that's a tremendous fit for a nuke, and just because of Lauren, well, you'll explain that you were in biomedical sales initially there. So thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, sure. So I think, Michael, first, I just want to kind of point out that, especially for the kind of business involved Navy nuke, sometimes you hear sales and you think, oh, used car salesman, or, oh, that sounds icky and terrible. But the fact is that, sales drives business. So you're looking at most businesses out there have kind of a tip of the spear sales kind of department. So there's a lot of flavors of that. And I found it to be very exciting because you're really kind of in control of your income. And unlike the Navy, where the harder you work and the better you do, you get more work and the same pay. In sales, the harder you work and the better you do, you get exponential income. So I chose it for that level of flexibility and kind of control. I would say if I had any guidance as far as sales, definitely tech sales. And what we kind of mean by that is, you really want to leverage and use your technical capacity that sets you apart from other people in the industry. So basically using, your background as a nuke as an example of what you're capable of learning in a short period of time, right? All of those things are going to be big differentiators in the market. So, I always use the Dunder Mifflin example. If there's anyone else, anyone will ever watch The Office, you want to really sell paper. You want to kind of find an industry that has some technical teeth to it, so that you can really throw your weight into it and sell yourself as being able to learn anything, sell anything sort of a thing and fit in that business model. Other couple points I'll just highlight for anyone that's interested in sales or thinks that it's something they should consider. I would say, if you like talking to people, if you enjoy interfacing with what could be a customer, or that's something that is appealing to you, reach out to me. Let's chat about it, because I think that it's very flexible. So as Michael said, the first thing I did was go into diagnostic sales, kind of in the biotech space, huge industry. I kind of did more or less a door-to-door thing, company car, company phone and laptop and all that kind of fun stuff. And then really pivoted into sort of the digital space, startups and tech, and love it. It's awesome. So I would say there's definitely some framework and parameters that I would want to help kind of guide somebody in terms of base salary and commission. That's something that kind of Michael asked me to speak to. And I would just say, in the market now, anyone on this call should not consider a base salary less than about 65 to 75,000. And obviously all companies are going to have base plus commission. So typical OTE, or on target earnings, which is what your kind of whole compensation is going to be considered at, you definitely are looking about the 120 range, and up from there for sure. So even to start. So, if you kind of see a company that's going to give you 35 base, and whatever plus commission, I wouldn't take it, because there's a little bit, certainly we want to bet on ourselves. And I know that anyone here would be successful, but you want to give yourself a little bit more of a cushion. Certainly it depends on the level of risk you're willing to take too. So I've got some great questions that you want to ask a sales leader or the hiring manager if you're having those discussions about what % of your sales force typically hits their number. Can you describe what your competitors look like, right? How much of the market do you kind of command, right? There's a lot of things that you can do to qualify that job and that company to just see if it's a good fit for you. So happy to, we could talk a lot about it, but just wanted to give everyone a little intro. and just to think about what some of the questions you should be thinking of would be. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Hey, Mike, I need to take off here. I wanted to just say thanks everyone for your time. It was great talking to everyone. I put my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Mike. Also, if you'd like to connect with me, again, shoot for the stars. Don't sell yourself short and work your butt off now. I promise you it will pay dividends in the future. So thanks, Mike, for putting this on. Great to see everyone.
Thank
Well
you, Mr.
said, Chris.
Hello to Amy. Please grab beers with Will sometime.
Will do. See you guys.
All right, we have a couple of medical related questions there for Corey that I just lost. Corey, did you happen to see those? Did we lose? Oh, there's Corey. He just shifted with Kevin dropping
Or
off.
you're muted there, my friend.
Let me.
There you go.
Yes, I need to unmute. So I answered one from Elise, and I actually just opened LinkedIn for the first time in about a year. I have a lot of notifications. So if anybody sent me something, I'm sorry that I didn't see it. So we don't really use LinkedIn a whole lot in the medical field, or at least docs don't. So I saw a question from Elise that I responded to, and the question was, did I have a pre-med kind of major? And I did not. I was mechanical engineering. I actually didn't enjoy hanging out with the med school. The pre-med people in college, I found them to be high strung. I decided to do medicine when I was at the end of my C tour. My friend John Coburn pushed me into it, but it worked out. And the question is, did I want to go to USIS? Now that's the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. That's basically the military medical school. I thought about it, but I didn't want to go back to the fleet. I had just gotten married, and I didn't want to keep. I wanted to be just a married civilian and not in the Navy anymore. But I do know, we did help one Nuke get in, and there's somebody else that's going to be working the kind of table tomorrow, who's a second year at USIS now. With USIS, you basically go in and whatever, if you started, if in a former life you're a commander or something, I don't know, but generally you go in and you just start out as an 03, and you just do 4 years of med school, then you go do residency. And in the Navy, generally, if you're in a military residency, you do the first year of residency, your intern year, at a hospital, kind of a standard thing, and then you go out to the fleet for a few years, and then you finish your residency, which is different from the civilian world. I can't speak as to Air Force or Army. And the question was about how to pay for civilian med school. There's a lot of ways. There's the GI Bill. There's actually scholarships for the military if you want to go into military medicine afterwards. There's the student loans and the regular things like that. There's also, depending on what field you're going into, there might be some pretty big scholarships available. If you want to go into primary care, there's some scholarships to the government that can pay for most, if not all, of your medical school. Oh, I'm a co-host now. Nice. So there's a lot of ways, and we can talk about that if anybody is interested. I have found medicine to be a really good fit for me. It's a technical field that's focused on people, and not that other fields aren't focused on people, but it's very closely focused on people and their well-being. And I found it to be a very good merging of scientific ability, technical ability, leadership, because regardless if you're working in the hospital, in an office, you've got this team of people. You're not going it alone, certainly, but also working one-on-one with people, and I have really enjoyed it. If anybody is looking in the medical field, either being a physician or being a nurse or being anything else, I'd be very happy to talk to you about that. I would like to respond to one question that I saw. Let me pull it up. That wasn't really related to medicine necessarily, but I think it's very important. Where is it? There was, now there's, maybe it was answered already, but the question was, when I'm coming into a company, can I say, I want this kind of work life, or I want, this amount of time to be remote, things like that. Can I ask for that without sounding, I think, entitled millennial is the word, the phrase that was used. And I think you should. Now, I'm in a different category because as a physician, I'm kind of pretty highly sought after as far as hiring goes, but whatever you're going for too, you're highly sought after. And I think you should think very hard about what kind of work-life balance you want to achieve, and what your priorities are. I'll tell you, for me, there was a period of time when I was working in Philadelphia that I was working my main job, working some side gigs in the hospital, and I started getting extremely burnt out. And I didn't really realize it until we were moving, and I looked back, and because we moved out to the country, and I realized like I was really burnt out. And you have to watch out for yourself, because some people might, but not reliably, look out for you. You have to look out for yourself, and you have to be very jealous with your time, because your time is your life. Your life is made up of time, and when people steal your time, they're killing you. It's like Princess Bride, when they put the Dread Pirate Roberts on the machine, they stole time from you, and that's your life. So you have to jealously guard that. And you have to be very upfront with what your expectations are. When you go on vacation, you should be on vacation. Now, if you're like the CEO of a company, okay, what are you going to do? Or if you're like running a startup, okay, but you have to be upfront with yourself about what that's going to be like. When you're on vacation, I would be highly jealous. I keep saying this term, highly jealous, but very prickly about people trying to call you, getting you to do things, because that's time with your family, that's time with your friends, or that's just time with yourself, which is also very important. And the more you give in, the more people will take. And so that's maybe a bit cynical, but I think it's totally okay to be upfront about what kind of work-life balance you want. This isn't to say that you can come in and say that you want 12 weeks of vacation a year in your own bathroom. That's not reasonable, but you should have your expectations, and you should stick with them. I'll go ahead and mute myself. I've spoken long enough, but if there's any questions or comments about that, I'd be happy to answer.
No, Corey, that's great points about not only the medical stuff, but the work-life balance. I think all of us I know these people talking, we all try to strike a work-life balance, because all of our spouses have careers. Will's wife's pediatrician, Lauren's husband's a lawyer, Corey's wife is a lawyer, and we all kind of have, and then there's kids involved, and so we kind of try to strike that work-life balance. And the one thing I've been telling at nukes, at meetups and other things is, while you're in the Navy, the Navy is your paycheck. It's what you feel good about, and it's also your friend circle normally. So when you get out, don't necessarily try to do all three with your job. Or you else might you might be coming up short. I always give myself as an example. My what I feel good about is being a dad. I help out of my church, and I do some prison ministry. How do I make a paycheck? Well, I pay myself a nonprofit salary for this, but then I do some Airbnb stuff, and I'd like to do some more consulting stuff. And I have a sugar mama. She's in the background there. And then my friends, I have a group that I run with, that are so I have like 3 separate buckets for what used to be one bucket. So, and I think that helps you identify your next job as, conceivably you could have all 3, maybe Alex's closest friends he works with, and then, Alex does a lot of veteran, mentorship within Amazon. So in that, he could really fill all 3 of us with this job, but like, I don't want everybody to necessarily feel like they have to do that with their next job. So,
Mike, can I touch
Alex,
on that really quick?
Yeah, or Mary, go ahead, fight.
So something I didn't realize was so difficult in the transition was realizing how much of my personal identity was tied up in the military. Like, I was a submariner. That is my friends, my free time, what I was proud of, like everything was about that. And that was a really difficult, but also empowering opportunity when you get out, is realizing, oh, I can reconnect with all these different parts of myself that I had to push to the side because of the job that I had before. And so while it's really challenging and you're really starting from square one in so many ways, it's also very easy to try and make your work replicate that once you get out of the military. And so just be conscious of it and realize it's okay to not have work that just consumes a lot of you, because that's kind of what a lot of us end up doing inadvertently, and you actively have to just be aware of it. And it takes a long time, and that's okay. But I personally really struggled with that.
Yeah, and I think kind of similarly, right? Like everybody goes through the transition different. Like literally everyone goes through their own transition, and it's like totally fine until it's not, right? And it's cool to be able to kind of step back, right? Like to Michael's point, right? For a little bit there, like my work, like why am I spending this time, was to ship boxes, and that's stupid, right? Like that doesn't actually do anything, right? But then being able to step back and then you look at like, okay, cool. Well, like within this, right, I mentor like 20 or 30 like veterans, and I run like a veteran retention campaign, and like I help reach our goal of like recruiting and retaining and promoting like 100,000 veterans. Like that's pretty cool, right? And so it's being able to work like within the system to find those like nuggets of goodness that will kind of help satisfy like that that I don't know, that higher call, I guess, that the Navy very, very easily fills. And at the risk of talking a little bit too much, I did kind of want to like circle back, because Corey had a very good point. And it's totally good being able to be honest about that work-life balance, right? I came into Amazon, which people say is like an absolute meat grinder. It's not. There actually is ways to do it, right? But I was very honest with my wife that like, look, I'm starting in a totally new industry and I want to, succeed and set myself up long term. So yeah, I hustled. I hustled my ass off for for like the first year completely, and then the second year pretty significantly as well. Right now, every single day was 1,000 times better than a deployment, and was 100 times better than rotating shift work as a shift eng in New York, and 50 times better than standing duty officer on Thanksgiving. And so it all comes into perspective, right? But yeah, I mean, I came in, I hustled, I probably worked maybe 60 hours was probably the biggest. Last October when I within like a year and a half of being with the company, I opened a 650,000 square foot, $140 million building as like the second guy in charge, with like 75 managers and 3,000 employees under my belt, right? And that 2 weeks that I opened it, I worked probably 70 to 80 hours. But right, that comes with I've gained a tremendous amount of experience. I've basically gained like an MBA's worth of knowledge of like how to run a business at scope and scale, and how to run these programs. And like, so the important thing is being able to gauge what your priorities are and to find a role that fits those, right? Because there's definitely a big scale, and there's big differences, right? And the best way to gauge that is to do these events, to stalk people on LinkedIn and just have honest conversations about what their day looks like, what their week looks like, to figure out if that's the right fit for you and your family. All right, now I'm done.
And if you don't want work-life balance, I strongly recommend entrepreneurship. If you just like want your job to swallow your life whole, start a company. I'll help you out.
I was going to do a couple round robin things, like real quick answers. Think of a career that that a nuke has that's atypical. So I will start. I guess atypical, just an interesting career that you like to say, hey, there's a nuke that runs that. How about the treasurer from Starbucks is a Navy nuke? I thought that's kind of cool, and he's helped us out before. Will, do you have one?
That was going to be my answer because I
Okay, pass on Will. Lauren, what's a
good.
different career that you know the Navy nuke has?
You put me on the spot. I mean, honestly, I don't know how unique it is, but executives at Bank of America that I know, lots of startups. So like Will said about not needing a resume, I feel like that's a very startup vibe. And you will definitely find that if you kind of go down that path. But anyways, I don't have any like good Starbucks stories, Michael, but anything, sky's the limit.
Anybody have one that I'm trying to think of our friends, Corey. Corey, go.
We have one friend who was running a yacht charter in the BVI for a while. The complications.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, he well, first he got out, he bought a big tract of land, developed it, sold it off for a lot of profit.
Oh, that land had a pew manufacturing on it,
church pew factory on it. Yes.
So he was selling church pews around the country. Yes.
Yes, to Navy bases, ironically. I mean, there's nukes doing all kinds of stuff, startup related.
Alex. Call on Alex.
Alex, go.
So the two, my most favorite, right? So one really good buddy, actually his dad was a nuke, was the vice president of the NFL, right? And then on the flip side of the other coin, another nuke classmate of ours does a nonprofit in like the DC area where he employs transitioning veterans to give them culinary experience in food trucks. And then through the fact that it's like a nonprofit, gets grants and then sets them up, fully funds their startup food truck. And then like truly every day helps veterans transition out and become successful business owners. So like the sky is the limit. You can literally do whatever you want. And I think that's almost like a little scary.
So I work in the middle market for private equity. One CEO of a DBI Services. It's an asset management business. A $500 million enterprise value is a nuke, a submarine officer. He's put his bio in the chat, but he's still CEO of another business now. Another USIC, their former COO was a submarine officer, also reservist for 20 years, or was just retired from the reserves after 20 years. And then another guy is the chief product officer of Innovise, which does like AutoCAD for wastewater systems. So some pretty senior leaders for those ones.
I got a weird one. You were looking for weird, right? Yeah, okay. Business contact of mine, her husband is a retired nuke. He owns and runs a small series of paintball laser tag businesses all over central New Jersey for like team building events for companies. He just like it's like laser tag, but it's more intense. And he loves doing it too. He's a riot.
Yeah, I just come up with another guy. Corey Marlon Terrell owns 2 Chick-fil-A's he's crushing it. Corey's shipmate, my company mate from the Naval Academy. Yeah. So
yep.
Chick-fil-A is legit though. Like you have so much autonomy as like a store and franchise owner. Like that is like legit.
Yeah.
It was a real process for him to get that franchise.
Yeah, no, I mean he's
their
awesome.
quality control is legendary.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
so
I have a mentor of mine. If anybody is interested in this is a form of entrepreneurship that is absolutely valid. I'm more of a software tech guy. My shtick is usually that nukes, I think you guys are incredibly capable of starting your own tech companies if you want. And my job is to help people with that. But I have a mentor of mine. He makes a living and teaches at business schools how to buy franchises and get them started. It is a really great form of entrepreneurship. By the way, Amazon does this and has a whole support program for those who want to open small businesses that are small delivery services. And I have a mill vet buddy of mine. He's not Navy or nuke, but he's opened one of those out in Pittsburgh.
and they've approached us to come to the conference. It's called the Amazon Last Mile Program. And I don't like, I always mention it at meetups about, I have the head of it that has the contact info. So if any of you know of any people, I don't want to get too Amazon heavy at the conferences. Sorry. I mean, come on. I got AWS, Blue Origin, and Amazon proper. So, there was one more question. Okay, Alex, go.
I got another one. A Nuke ran all of the there's a company called Cativa that makes all of the iPhone screens and Samsung screens in Korea, Japan, and China. And there were 2 Navy nukes, one in charge of all engineering, the other in charge of actually going out and making sure that the tools were operating correctly. It's another good one.
Yeah, that's I mean, that kind of career field of procurement, or there's another noun for what that is. But nukes are really good at the logistics, but also like looking the technology 5 years out. And so there's a gentleman at Apple that's in charge of the heat sinks, looking in the future heat sinks for their mobile devices, and some other, but they're all through industry. There's a question about someone's interested in living internationally. Now, I would say talk to some of the bigger companies at the career fair. Stryker has a ton of stuff overseas. Amazon has a ton of stuff overseas. Schneider Electric is headquartered in Paris. Mary, I don't know if you're saying General Electric or you're just your contacts. Yes, go ahead.
Context. So this is something that I really wanted to do when I was transitioning, because my husband, then boyfriend, fiance, also a submariner, really wanted to live abroad. My parents have lived abroad for a number of years now, and we realized, like, let's do it. Why not? Screw it, let's go. It is really, really hard to get a job with an American company overseas. But any company, honestly, because when you think of the math, how expensive it is to move someone who doesn't have industry experience abroad, it's tough. So if you're going and like your spouse has a job abroad, or like you're a dual mill couple and you'd like to get a job in, Japan, for example, that's completely different. But if you're just, on your own trying to do that the first time, it is tough. Highly recommend, we've talked a lot about LinkedIn as being like the key to unlocking a lot of this stuff. Absolutely. In that context, find veterans in that company and call them. Like, I've been floored by how willing strangers were to just talk to me when I was transitioning. That is absolutely the time to do it if you want to get overseas. Is you need to have a buddy on the inside who can help you figure out that, the secret code, the black box that is HR hiring Americans to go move to Europe, Japan, wherever it is. So it's tough, it's doable, but you really got to hustle.
And these are tremendous questions to take to the people representing their companies at the career fair. So when you go, I'm not saying it's always a bigger company that has the positions there, but if you look at the companies I mentioned, plus other ones that have come in the past, the Booz Allens or whatever, there's companies that have positions all over the place. And ironically, Mary, we do have somebody that's looking for a job in Japan because her girlfriend or fiance is going. She's a Nuke, or not Nuke SWO. She's a SWO, which is the harder which is the location that's farther from Tokyo, Yokosuka or Sasebo. She's going to the one that is farther from Tokyo. So he's looking for a job kind of there. So if you guys, you can think if yes, Andrew, that's right, Sasebo. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah. So if we as a brain trust can start thinking about jobs for my friend Andrew in Sasebo, Japan, let me know. So conference logistics questions. The companies have slowly told me when they will man the booths. Some will man every second. AWS will man every second of the day. TerraPower can only manage half the day because it's 2 senior engineers at TerraPower, that ex-Navy nukes that are coming, giving their own time. Like Corey said, they are giving you their valuable time to come talk to you. And I think they're going to be there from 1600 to 2000. BCG sent me their schedule. Their Andrew.
Hey, Michael, is Rachel Assard? So Rachel Assard is a nuke, and she's actually the skill bridge or one of the lead recruiters at TerraPower now. So that's another Navy nuke in there.
Guess who got her that job?
My man.
And guess who loves me because I said a female Navy nuke submariner. Just and not even like force her. I just said, hey, TerraPower's hiring, and she's like, TerraPower, I'd love to intro a TerraPower. And the recruiter just had reached out to me, and I just all I do is intro people, and that's all these people do on the board. The nukes get themselves the job, so I didn't get her she got herself the job, but yeah, so she's she will be very involved in the future probably, and she's awesome. She was at Amazon for a long time, and they just she was in a division she didn't like, so and she's super cool. So and she's a Mainer too, I think. Mary, USS Maine, I think. No.
No, she was SSGN. I think she was the Ohio.
She's a GN. Okay, Ohio.
She's the reason I got this job.
So. Oh, nice. What goes around comes around. Other questions that we should tell people that have never joined in before. This is how best we can do an in-person career fair. In the past, these board members would be walking around the room, grabbing you and saying, "Hey, do you have any questions?" Whatever. We can't do that as easily over Zoom. The companies can't have multiple conversations at the same time in a breakout room. Companies will have 2 breakout rooms, so you can maybe bounce over to another breakout room. I encourage the chat in the breakout rooms as much as possible. Mary, you had a question, comment?
I just had a comment on that. So I think it's really easy, especially for anyone who's just joining the NUPOC team, to get really wrapped up in formality of it. I think I speak for myself, and if anyone else feels this way, please chime in. I think this is a really great opportunity to just let your guard down. None of us are going to judge you if what you think is a dumb question, because we've all been there. You don't ever feel the need to like perform for us. You know, we're not representing our companies right now. We really just want to help you. And so granted, when it's time to, put your best face on, do it. But with the team here and what Mike has built, I think it's one of the few places and very unique to our community where you are allowed to be vulnerable, and you should be, because no one's perfect. I think it's very common for nukes to put up that front. We've been doing it for like years and years and years and years. Like since you came into power school, just everyone assumes like, oh yeah, I'm the best. I know exactly what I'm doing. It's kind of drilled into you. But it's all right to not know what you're doing. I've been out of the Navy for like 2 years now, and I'm still figuring it out. I just kind of happened to fall into offshore wind by sheer dumb luck. So it's all right.
How do you feel about parenting?
I think that's really well stated. That's what I think any of the board members are here to offer, is just it's okay to say, like, whether you're getting out or staying in, like, that's a hard time to make that decision. And if you're getting out, there's not any other job in the world where you have to give 9 to 12 months notice that you're going to go do something else and not have something lined up on the other side. Like, that's hard, and that's okay. And if you need anything, like, let us know. Happy to be here.
Lauren, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was actually thinking on the it's probably a good pivot and transition to Mary's point about don't feel like you have to perform with this group. Like we're definitely there to help. I wanted to make a comment on thinking about and prepping for what does performance look like when you do interview and when you are kind of face to face with a company that you know might want to work for. So I just wanted to give a couple quick things, Michael, if I could, that I think really helped me prepare well for conferences and interviews. I mean, first thing, definitely like be yourself, right? No one, you're not a robot. No one expects you to be. But let's be the best version of yourself and be prepared. So I think for me, what that meant is for interviews, right? People are going to ask you, think about what a company would want to know about you, right? Like, what's your superpower, right? What's your kryptonite? Tell me a time when you overcame some really adverse or really challenging scenario. So what I would sincerely do is kind of think through those things, Google search common interview questions, whatever it is, talk to anyone on this board who's interviewed before, and kind of come up with some good stories. People like stories. So, and we've got a lot of them, right? You got some great military, really unique stories that are going to set you apart from a lot of other civilian candidates out there going for the same jobs. So my advice is just kind of practice that, come up with some key points you want to make in your story. So you're not kind of, rambling on or what have you, and just have a couple stories in your back pocket that you can kind of share and really kind of showcase your talents and your skills.
No, that's a great point, Lauren. I didn't prepare it. Not that I went for any formal interviews, but I did have one with Humana that I didn't have my basic responses ready, to use a phrase. What was your? And I had to think about them a little bit, and I was dinged on it. Now they said I asked great questions about the company, and but no, these are things. Now tomorrow, I don't know if you're going to be interviewed, but I think you can't walk in there thinking, when somebody sees a tremendous candidate in their breakout room, that they might want to at least kind of comb over whether they want there. They might, I mean, they're going to ask you some stuff. The recruiters definitely will. The nukes will be more like us and be like, hey, could you see yourself living in, Huntsville, Alabama, or whatever. I'm looking for a project manager, and I'll probably still be looking for another project manager in 6 months when you're getting out, or when in 1 year when you're getting out. Would you consider this? And I mean, have some of those responses ready, because not to pump your ego too much, but like you're very desirable product right now. Like you are like there's everybody is hiring. Most people don't have the vetting that you do, the technical experience you do. So it's you're in a good position. So don't think that you're not going to be courted a little bit, to use that term. Secondly, as far as the breakout rooms go, you might walk in a breakout room where I'm already in there just checking on a company that hasn't had many people come by their table yet. And, and then I will promptly leave if you want to talk to the company, but you might walk in and another nuke is talking to somebody. So what I would do, I just, in the chat window, I'd throw like, hi, I'm, Joe Smith. I'm a junior officer on a carrier out of San Diego, and just a brief intro while you're waiting, just to kill the time. And then, anybody with common sense will realize that, all right, somebody else is in the breakout room, like, and now is a three-way conversation necessarily going to work? But sometimes questions apply to both people, just like you guys are asking questions that apply to more than just yourselves. So, it's different. I mean, the fact that we have so many people that are going to log in tomorrow just shows the Zoom format is good for something. It's our largest like sign up ever. Now, the companies don't have to travel, so they like it, but there is a little bit of a learning curve with that. Anybody, Alex, from your Amazon experience, have you been involved in any Zoom career fairs? Are you still, or I'm sorry to interrupt you there in your dinner. So
no, you're good. Yeah, so it's So you'll see, right? There's going to be, this time last year, there were some companies that were really good at it. Some companies really bad at it. I think at this point, the learning curve has gone through. Most people kind of have a decent idea. I wouldn't expect full-on interview tomorrow, right? It's unlikely to happen. I think what Michael talked about where, if you've got multiple people in the room, you just kind of put a quick chat blurb, right? Kind of express, hey, this is what's going on, right? It will be, think of it like a resume screen on steroids, right? Where they'll see it, they're like, yep, 100%, right? Coming out of like one of these Zoom webinars, for instance, like from my perspective as as like a hiring manager, I would identify someone and say, all right, I think this person would be good in like these 3 roles. I would steer them directly to this role that I know is available in this location with a job that's good. And I would essentially skip the resume screen, skip a phone screen, and just kind of push them straight into a full-on interview loop. Because, right, now I understand what you're interested in. I have a pretty good idea of what I think you'd be good at, and I understand the location. Right. And so if those 3 things meet, sweet. Right. That's like 90% of the work right there. And I know a pretty good spot, and I know pretty confidently that you'd make it through the interview. Right. So that's probably the strategy of companies tomorrow. If anyone else has like any other kind of perspective on it, that again, from my perspective as a hiring manager, that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, and if you talk to people like us for the companies they're representing, they kind of have an idea what they think you'd be good at. And if most of the companies, I know the nukes that are coming to represent their companies, they are good mentors. And they are not going to, steer you too far astray. Now, if you have a pretty hardcore location based on family, based on spouse's job, based on this, and they're trying to steer you to another job that would be a better fit, just be honest with them. You're like, yes, that really probably will be a better fit job wise. However, like Alex needed to go to Indianapolis. I don't know if Lauren had to go to the Research Triangle, but her husband was, looking in the Research Triangle for law school. And Corey's wife had a great job in New York City that, she was working there so he did his residency in Philadelphia, which was a train right away, So, so that's the kind of stuff that you should keep in mind. So,
one thing on interviewing, I just want to throw out there, if you're trying to say you're really great at this thing, let's say you want to show an interviewer that you're really great at project management, right? They're going to read your resume, but they don't want to hear what's on your resume. They want to have an anecdote where you did project management somewhere else, right? And they might try to get 2-3 examples out of you. Personally, if I'm trying to get a specific skill and know how good someone is at doing that, I'm going to ask them, hey, how do you do this? And they're going to give me a canned answer, which they practiced 10 times, right? Then I'm like, oh, give me another example, right? And they might give me something they practiced 5 times. I'm trying to dig down to the point where they're not giving me canned answers anymore. I'm trying to catch them off the cuff where they're giving me real examples of where they've done project management or whatever skill I'm trying to look for. So think about that as you're interviewing. If you say you're a 5 out of 5 on project management or whatever skill, make sure you have 3-4 answers ready or anecdotes to say, yes, you can do that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like these people do this professionally. Like they can smell through bullshit faster than any chief you've ever met in your life. So it's a fine, nice edge between being authentic and being who you are as a naval officer and celebrating your achievements, and also being humble, because they have no idea whether or not you in your past life is actually going to result in a good investment, right? Like you're not God's gift to them. You have to earn it. And so coming in with that humility and understanding that you have a lot to learn and a lot to work to is extremely important, because the last thing that someone needs is a Navy veteran who's, loves the smell of their own shit too much. Like it's really just not a good look for anybody. So just understand that And that's really important. Like I do a lot of interviews for GE, and you can pick those people out so fast. So just be aware of that. Like it's a very, very difficult. It takes a lot of practice dancing on that knife's edge, but you can do it. You definitely can. So.
There was one, thank you, Mary. There was one question about compensation. My 2 cents on compensation is obviously know where you're located at, and that means a lot. Chris's cost of living in New York City versus Lauren's in the Research Triangle versus mine and near Penn State in Pennsylvania are all very different. So that's one thing. Also, I think companies haven't quite caught up to it yet. The working remotely aspect, you might get paid a Boston salary, but get to live, an hour, west of Boston where it's cheaper and come in as necessary. That's another, and that's something that I can talk to you guys informally about, but hiring post-COVID is very different than pre-COVID. Not that we're totally done with COVID, but companies are thinking about jobs more regionally. And but the smart companies have now put it on their jobs description. You will be required to come in the office once a month. You will be able to required to come in the office once a week. I don't know. So that's anybody else want to talk about compensation real quick? Mary, you got it?
I can talk to that. Yeah. So I think it really depends on where you're going to live. 150K in New York City is about the same as 100K like anywhere else. So do the cost of living calculation. It'll save you a lot of stress. I know they go over that in TGPS, at least they did when I did it. It's just it's really hard to just expect to get a pay raise coming from the Navy and going to a completely new industry. Like that's probably unrealistic for a lot of things, unless you've got a golden resume. But also realize that depending on where you enter in industry, it could result at the right time, it could result in dividends based on your work ethic, what you're doing, if it's a growing industry. So there's a lot of different variables there. So just entering in at the right time and proving yourself can go really, really far.
I'm gonna jump in and counter Mary. One of Mary's points here to try and be a little more positive. I had the exact opposite experience when I left post JO. I went right off the boat, first JO tour, 5 and dive, got my ass out of there. The career options that I had in front of me at the time were all significantly better paying than what I was earning as an 03. Everyone's going to have different experiences based on where they're going and what they're doing, to be sure. But I had the exact opposite experience, Mary. So for those of you who are worried about salaries, it goes both ways.
I think the other thing, right, again, it's going to vary by jobs and by location. But also, right, if the job is going to pay less than what you decide is, hey, this is what our mark needs to be, right? Then you can be picky, right? But also understand that when you get into a company, you are most likely, again, this might be a broad generalization, but you will most likely be more competent than your peers, and you will most likely promote at a higher rate and will be compensated and promoted quicker, right? It's not like the Navy where, hey, you're going to spend 2 years as a JO regardless of what you do, right? If you show up, if you're competent and you just produce value for the company every day, yeah, you're probably going to promote faster and you're probably going to make more money, right? But again, to Mary's point, it's a little bit where you're starting over, right? Not completely over, right? But it is a new industry. And so oftentimes you will have to take a pay cut, right? That's, obviously there's huge variance between that though.
I think
Yeah,
there's
I took a.
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Lauren. No, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, to bring kind of both of those kind of sides together, I think it's important to have as realistic an expectation about the industry area and as you can. And a good way to do that, right? Talk to your peers that have transitioned around the same time or in similar industries. talk to us about it. We kind of know our industry and what the going rate is, sort of a thing potentially. And I also just dropped in, the chat that Glassdoor, it's hit or miss, but that's an app, website, whatever, that has some general ranges for different companies specifically, and sometimes different roles. So getting a feel for what that role kind of, and what that position really kind of commands and demands is helpful. The only other little nugget I wanted to kind of drop here is just there's an appropriate, and I'm sure probably most people know this, but just for the general awareness, there's an appropriate time to have a compensation discussion. And it's not at the beginning of the conversation, right? So kind of to Mary's point about humility and really showcasing your skills and kind of earning that, right? You want to, the person may understand inherently the value of Navy nuclear power. In the event that they don't, and you should treat them as if they don't, right? It's kind of your job to lay that out for them a bit. And kind of when you get to the point, let them guide that. They may actually bring up, just to see if you're even in the same ballpark, a range. They might give you a salary range. And that's kind of an appropriate way to discuss that. So I just wanted to say, probably won't come up in the first conversation. That's okay. Might not even come up in a first official interview. That's also okay. But definitely having an idea, expectation of what that role should be is going to help you kind of drive where you want to be, where you think you deserve to be, sort of a thing.
A couple,
Oh, sorry, Eric.
yeah, a couple of nuggets there. Take this with a grain of salt, but this is just based on my experience, right? We are past our parents' generation where nobody talked about comp within the workplace. My peers talk about it. I talk with my peers. We know who's fairly compensated, who's not. So kind of when you get in there, when you start building relationships with people, have the discussion, right? Because there are people, and there's a bias specifically, and unfortunately against women and minorities still out there in comp, because companies still think they can get away with it, which is ridiculous. So that's one. Two, yeah, ridiculous. Two is, if you're having networking calls with nukes, right? Feel it out, but don't be afraid to ask too. Hey, what's the ballpark of what you make in your role? Because then you get an idea, right? And if you don't want to live in New York City and make $80K a year, right? That's pretty low for New York City. Then like you should never go for that industry, right? But how will you know if you don't ask? But it happens. So, and those are the two nuggets I want to put out there.
No, and my mandatory kind of headhunter guidance, because for some reason, a lot of nukes think they have to get jobs through a headhunter because the headhunters really prey on nukes. And headhunters get 25% approximately of your first year salary as their commission. So all of my friends that work in companies that they use headhunters, the first thing they do when they have to use a headhunter to fill a position is lower the starting salary. So if you it would be beneficial for you to get a job without, or the same job without a headhunter as you would, because then they'll just pay you a little more, or a lot more, like $10,000 a year more, if you don't get the job through the headhunter. So that's just the guidance there. Plus, Amazon and GE Wind aren't using headhunters, so or are a lot of small startups, because either they don't have the money or they don't need to use headhunters to fill their positions. So just that's the kind of guidance there. So
No, they rely on me spreading the gospel of offshore wind. So
exactly.
if you're interested,
Yeah.
hit
So
me up.
you busy, very, very busy people, I'd like to wrap this up. Is there any burning fires that you think need to be put out? Does anybody have time to stop by tomorrow? Corey was manning a window for a while for the med school table. Anybody have time that they can just pop in? Alex is gonna stop in as Amazon and as a board member. If you can't, like everybody has lives and kids and jobs and everything like that, spouses. dogs, houses. But yeah, so to the nukes.
Mike, Mike, can I take one last dime here on
Yes, sir, Eric.
or differentiating skills? So I've had the opportunity to work very deeply with 5 different companies within the private equity realm. And that's across the board from the shop floor up to the C-suite, right? And what is severely lacking is people who can effectively manage a project and keep people moving on that project, right? And those are things we did as nukes, right? It's one, you did project management because you had to, and your exo was yelling at you, and you just picked up those skills and you moved on with your life, and now you have them forever. 2 is leadership, right? A lot of people in the civilian world, especially our age, maybe not my age anymore, but when I got out of the Navy, when they say they led people, it might be like 1 or 2 people, right? It's not the leadership that we experience managing division, managing chiefs, managing 30 to 40-year-olds, right? It's wholly different than what we got. So it's real leadership that you have. So you've managed real projects and you've led real people. And those are huge differentiators companies are looking for.
Mike, can I do one last plug? I'm very sorry that I can't make it to DC tomorrow. I'm actually on vacation in Maine, but I hope to see you all at some point in the near future. I want to shout out to anyone who isn't really sure if they want to go into business at all. If finance and like number stuff, business stuff isn't really like your cup of tea, talk to me. I knew that I needed to work on something concrete, and that concrete thing for me was wind turbines. Bonus points if you get something unique that is concrete. So offshore wind turbines is where I really ended up wanting to go and am now. So if you're not really sure what to do, but know that maybe traditional business isn't your cup of tea, just hit me up anytime. I owe everything for where I am now for veterans that gave me a few minutes of their time. So I'd love to pay it forward.
Yeah. Yeah, really anybody on this panel is fair game to hit up on LinkedIn and reach out to. And if you need me to be the intermediary because you don't want to just cold ask them something, let me know, because that's what I do. Couple quick things. If you are in the greater DC area, come out Thursday night. It's the restaurants near Reagan Airport. It's Haleo, Crystal City. There's a couple in DC. It'll be informal, but there will be company reps there, so you'll get to practice your networking skills with some companies present. Myself and William will be in attendance. And I guess I didn't ask any of you, but like Lauren and Kevin are the only 2 close enough, but I didn't I don't know, in COVID times I didn't know if you guys would want to travel and with life and being busy. So looks like we're gonna have a pretty decent turnout, probably. Well, I don't know how many, but secondly, I think I'm gonna send out, or I will be sending out a survey after all of this. It's not really a survey, it's just let us know where your friends are, so that if we are traveling, New London, Guam, San Diego, whatever, when we do these meetups, it's like this. It's a lot of just ask us the dumb question that you don't know the answer to. Or do you have a contact in tech sales? And I'll say, well, Lauren's busy, but I'll introduce you. And if you just give her like 2 weeks, she'll get back to you. Or Corey, I introduce him to a nuke interested in medicine every 2 or 3 months, and those type of things. So the meetups kind of keep things, rolling as far as the intros. And I met a future board member, Alex, at a meetup back in the day, so when I send out that survey, it's really like just over the next year we're going to be traveling and have these meetups. Let us know where your friends are, and you don't have to name every friend in the Navy, but maybe your top 5 or 6 closest people that you think could benefit from this type of discussion. And then that's about it. Thank you, board, for giving me and us your very precious time, and thank you for answering all these questions. And And Will, thank you for helping moderate the questions tonight too. So, anyways, well, everyone have a good night, and then we will talk soon. So,
Have fun
thanks.
tomorrow, everyone.
Take care.
It'll
Yeah.
be great.
Have fun.
Don't be
Enjoy
stressed.
it. It's
Put
fun.
some- make good
Yep.
choices. Yeah.
Have fun.